Then in concluding our work for the day, we're going to be doing this image, which presented itself very naturally. You'll see from the photographic reference that almost from the beginning we start to see our subject in terms of vignette. If we want an area to fade in a little more snow back here. Here we can start with a lighter tone. I'm going to start with a lighter tone. And it's more organic in nature, so I think using this round brush is somewhat better. Background, and how does that meet our foreground? Comes down via the carriage driver and finds its way into our horses. I know this is not really going to look like horses. And that's not the true intent. I would say the intent is more to find an interesting abstract quality to the shape and a use of the vignette that we can build on. Naturally, the color is settling to the bottom, which I like. Put in a few trees. Yeah, this is about and I think I will blend some of these grays up here just to get a feeling of overhead branches. So this is much more organic in nature than the buildings that we did. And interesting how the extensions of our objects really become attractive just because they're darks meeting the light area. But notice how that mid value is running through everything and joining the trees with the background trees, with the carriage, with the and the horse and figures. So in this way we have some interesting white shapes here, 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 here. A few found shapes when we look through the trees, but this corner largely covered, and so this is like a variation of, I think, the classic vignette, but still very much a vignette, and starts with this sort of ghost image. This is a rather strong tone for a ghost image, but it's still a ghost image, and in that sense prepares us for painting our larger work, more involved work. Let's have a look at these three. You can, I think on first glance, your impression is these are abstract paintings, because we don't see anything recognizable just yet. But I believe as we develop them, you will see. Let's step back. Okay. Looking for those big first shapes to state the horse. All right, one coming at us. I think that's the more difficult horse, in my opinion. Driver standing, passengers sitting. A little high there. This is where I spend the most time because I want to get the proportions pretty accurate. So I'm lining up the lines. This is about right. Then it's not quite so long. It feels okay. Just want to preserve a couple whites through there. Some basic idea of the trees. Let's paint the ghost image. Bring this up a little bit. And I'll show you what I mean by a ghost image. A ghost image is just a very pale rendering. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to this, but very, very pale. And we paint everything. We just kind of want to get a very joined feeling to the whole composition before we move ahead. So it's often a very kind of fluid application, joining everything. Not so concerned about leaving whites, or because we're working so pale that as this dries it's going to get almost white. And I guess the point of this is to kind of see it in front of us before we really commit to the stronger values. And we can see the joint shapes too. And how they present themselves. I'm going to stay kind of loose back here as well. And join all these shapes with this wonderful gray. Can clean up the palette at the same time. I might preserve a few whites through here. To break up this section. Dry brush. Oops. So it's starting to look something like a vignette. So that's encouraging. Can you see that joint shape? I believe so. And just a little bit of that quality through the bottom. Kicking up some snow. That's where we're being a little inventive, is how we finished this lower part. I do want it to kind of come off the bottom, but in a, I guess, a sort of fun manner. Also, this kind of gets me in a painterly mood, if that makes sense. So now we can start to return to this, and I'm going to, I guess, begin in the background, and I'm using, let's just use some palette grays, stuff we have lying around. Maybe add a little bit of cool lavender to this gray just to cool it off a bit. What I want to do here is kind of come through the background foliage. Start to build it up a little bit. And find the whites that are important. Maybe a little bit of a graded application. Build it up a little bit. here we're just creating a bit of dry brush to show that sort of background color. I want to keep it sort of pale behind the ears of this horse. I'm going to put a little water through here, carry this down, and show how this tree is meeting. Not too close. I'll keep a little space there. And we don't need this rough edge. Smooth it out a little bit. Let's try, however, sort of a rougher application just to see how that looks. Photograph shows us so many beautiful details. How can we avoid those details? I mean, we don't want it to overtake the painting. You notice that I keep the image very small. This, I feel, helps me to see the subject as a large combination of shapes primarily, and I can avoid the detail this way too. Right, let's bring this guy in. Another one. A little more water. A little more lavender. Yeah, sort of a broken effect is what I'm hoping for. Continue. We've got a good pace here, so I think we should continue. And pace very much relates to the brushwork. So I'm trying to keep that sort of pace. A little stronger in this one. Using burnt sienna, a little bit of lavender, and a little bit of sepia. Gonna come right through here. A little bit, dilute it. And one more. A little bit of Payne's Gray. No, this is almost plenty. For the moment, we might come back with some. I'll put a few smaller branches to sort of help us think about. When we return to this, we'll be able to see them, decide, how to proceed. Using a little bit of extra to the side, pull some out somewhat. Still keeping kind of a broken quality to the shape. Little definition there. All right, I think we can move on. I'm going to start in the head of the horse that's nearest to us. Sepia, a little bit of burnt sienna for that reddish color, and a little bit of lavender to give it some body. And let's look at that face while we're doing this. Start with that ear. And create the blaze. Blaze is really so helpful. To start to give me a focus on the horse. That's pretty good. Might be a little large. Let's see. And this brush just makes the perfect ear, doesn't it? A little more water. About to here. Okay, we'll leave some lighter color through here. Create the rump. And blinders on, that might be a handy piece for us. Okay. And I can see my ghost of the prior application and make it a little flatter. Flatter means, not flatter, I should say, more neutral. I feel like I should join the body to our figure. Like that. Just standing up here. Is it still wet? A little bit. It's all right. Making just a little larger. Okay. Let's carry some of this color into the tree so it's not too isolated. Now we build outward to the cart. I'm going to carry some of that a little brighter red, but in terms of value, about the same. Gray with a little bit of red, a bit of lavender, something like that. And we're going to try and shape it as we go. And then join it to our horse. Something like that. It's a little tricky point. I kind of want them to intersect with the background. So I'm making it a little taller than it actually, the figure actually is. Okay. Let's move on. The next horse. We use a slightly different color of more yellow ochre, but still quite gray. Everything is very gray in this painting, which gives it a strength. Okay, and we start to, let's compare. Where's the head here? Where's the rump here? About here. More water, I think. And just almost carrying the water from here. Use a little burnt sienna along the edges. I noticed that there's a nice coloration to this horse, primarily through the edges, the soft edges. So I'm going to try and take advantage of that. Burnt sienna. We're not using it so strong, but it's standing out quite a bit, isn't it? We can put the harness coming out here a little bit. Something like that. Yep. Okay. I think we can add, yes, a little bit of that burnt sienna elsewhere, since we have sort of a theme here. But I want to add it, you know, in a soft context so that it spreads out. Not through ears, but through the body. We'll add some dry brush as this begins to set up. I'm going to add some of that also to the near horse. A little more burnt sienna, a little bit of Payne's gray. A little more clarity. how much to show. Like that feels proper. Feels pretty good in terms of what we're showing in the feet or hoofs of our animals. Some dry brush, kind of make it feel like the snow is kicking up. Well, it's coming out. Pretty good scene. Everything is reading pretty well. I'm going to introduce a little more red to our figure. So it feels like he's kind of looking our way. Same with this figure. We need something else here. Maybe some of that red in the rig. And a part of the sled. Even a part of the strapping. Pretty muted red, isn't it? We can use a little flashy where we want some attention. Through here, perhaps. The face of the horse. A little more splatter down below. Let's make a pale gray. This is a way to connect it to the bottom. It's our runoff, in essence. Okay, now I'm going to look back at these trees for a moment and add some of these same grays, palette grays, a little extra darkness here and there. I'm not sure how much is necessary, but I want to try some darker notes to see how it comes out. This one I think I can fade in a little bit, actually. Behind the main subject, so I'm going to fade them in just a little. Just want to create a little depth in this section. Show some things passing in front of other things. Create a little depth. A little feeling of strength in those trees. Maybe restate a little. touch up above, dry brush. I like that a little bit with the sepia. With a little sepia in the blinders of this horse here. I'll help him to come forward. A little bit of edging. Nostril. We can try a little lifting too. Let's take just a little water through here. Paper towel. And that doesn't pull it out too much. We have to go with a little extra color, I think. So for example, here. That. All right, let's see how that dries. Looks pretty good for now. Okay. Not much more. I think what I want to do here is just a little bit of red in the rigging of the sled. I feel the angle is pretty good, perhaps a little bit flatter. That. broken strokes. Okay. Add basically happy, so I think when you're basically happy, you kind of just move on. Let's put on a few whites. Where would they be effective? Let's try kind of give him a brim on his hat. Shoulder. Wondering about the highlight here. And I do want to throw some white on this to give the effect of falling snow. First a few branches. Maybe that's too much detail. Kind of a balancing act. How much is enough? How much is too much? This is the kind of thing that I think you sleep on. Anyway, we have sort of a nice motif here. I'm going to get it with a hairdryer and then throw some splatter onto this. A small brush, a little bit of white here. And I do want to dilute that so that it'll come off the brush. So we take a little water, dilute it. Let's put some down near the legs. A little hard to see maybe. And in effect, what this white does, yes, it conveys snow and it pushes the image back into the snow. So we're pushing it, that's how I look at it, is we're pushing this image into the snowy area. So that's why we save it for the end, why we do it just in these dark areas. We can concentrate. If we have an area that, for whatever reason, doesn't look particularly good, we put more snow on it. If we want an area to fade in a little more snow back here. So this last process is one way that we create the atmosphere. Finalize the atmosphere. Most of it's created with our grays, those first grays that we applied. There we go. Horse-drawn carriage in winter. Let's let this dry.